morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone. Welcome to MandoLessons Live. I am your host, Baron Collins Hill. Hope you're all having a good time. It's been a while since I did a live stream here. That was a little bit of La Bastrang, classic French-Canadian Quebec tune. And yeah, all right, so the way this works, let's see if I can remember, is it's an hour of Q&A. So if you have questions, throw them out there. I'm happy to discuss anything mandolin, music related. You know, it doesn't have to be mandolin specific. If you're working on something, it can be more conceptual. Doesn't really matter. And throw questions out there, and I'll do my best to answer them. And also, if you have tune requests, I'm happy to try to play them if I can remember how they go. I don't know anything. I usually don't play any copyrighted stuff, and I'm probably 50-50 on remembering how tunes go on one of these. Well, let's see who we got in the chat here. We got... Also, yeah, make yourself at home. Chat with people in the sidebar. It's a great community of folks. And I'll rattle through there and see who we got coming up. All right, we got C Drive. Good to see you. It's been a little while. Coming on 1 p.m. Eastern time. Got to watch those mandolin players like a hawk. Yeah, you never know when we're going to go live streaming. We got Lindsay from BC. Alan, hope you are well as well. All's well here. David says Wit. I don't know who Wit is, but I hope you find him, and thanks for joining us. Jim, good to see ya. Z Drive says 300 subs away from 100K. Yeah, wild times. Busy times. Tim Demain from Devon, UK. Great to have you here. Thanks for joining us. Jim says, when you play a polska with a lot of dotted notes, are you still able to keep your right hand moving? Yeah, great question. So, let me see. I think it might depend on the polska, what right hand pattern you're using. So, I'm not a master of Scandinavian music, but I will tell you what I do on a particular variety, or a couple different kinds of tunes. I don't know if this is true for all Slang Polskas, but in the case of Slang Polska from Morco, which is on my website, is just a constant down, up pattern in your right hand. So the tune... It's a really good workout. It's a little complicated, but what would it? I'm gonna see if I can say it at the same time. Down, up, down, down, down. Yeah, down, up, down, 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 down. Ooh, this is a really good... You started off with a great question there, Jim. So I think the thing, if you really want to think about this particular tune, is see if you can get that right hand to do straight eighth notes. It's going to sound a little funny. Yeah, so that's what's going on. It is a constant down, up right hand pattern on Slang Polska from Morco. There is a lot of there's a lot of quarter notes. So, like, my right hand, you'll see my right hand moving a lot and not that many notes coming out. In the B part, for example. That big string of quarter notes at the end are all going to be downs. And then... there are other times with other polskas where I'll use a jig rhythm. I'm trying to think of one. And it's a very spacious jig rhythm. You're not going to be going... It's going to... So that actually does, maybe I'll come back to that, but it does speak to a question that I actually have that I haven't figured out an answer to yet, which is essentially, yeah, I don't even, it's, this is sort of my midlife crisis mandolin question, which is I'm trying to refigure out pick direction because it can get a little weird with some kinds of tunes. So the kinds I'm kind of struggling with are like polkas and slides. I don't need to get into why, but ultimately it seems like constant down, up, down, down, up, down, down, up, down, down, up, down, down, up, down for slides. Is a little heavy-handed, is a little much. It's really intense and kind of energetic, but also a lot of work for your right hand. And going down, up, is a little slow and not quite energetic enough, but you can't... There's no in-between between down, up, and down, up, down. There's that I've discovered yet. So I'm trying to figure out if there is a pattern that's going to make me feel better about playing those kinds of tunes. Because right now I feel a little bit like I don't have the right feel, and my pick direction rules are falling apart in those sort of edge scenarios. Anyway, that's a long sort of slide into pick direction land early in the morning. But I'll catch back up with the chat. We have Michael from DC. Oh, hey, Michael. How you doing? Oh, that was so much fun. A lot of time in the car, but it was really fun to be there and play. So I played at Michael's wedding last weekend up on Bainbridge Island, which was really lovely. Yeah, had a great time. I know Gabrielle did as well. And yeah, hope you're getting some nice, chill, relaxed time after what I'm sure is always a adventure trying to put a wedding together. But yeah, glad you're back in DC, safe and sound. And we have Betsy. Good to see ya. All right, let's see. Tim says, I have a habit of rolling my wrist when I'm picking rather than picking up and down. Can you recommend exercises to help cure this? Great question. Love it. All right, 2 for 2 on really good questions. This one needs a sip of tea. So you're using too much wrist. My guess, now tell me if I'm wrong, because it's not necessarily the case, but yeah, I guess by rolling the wrist, do you mean only using your wrist, or do you mean you're doing a lot of sort of... option number 1 is only using your wrist, rolling it around this way, and option number 2 is rolling it this way. I know there's a word for that, but which option are you talking about? Because that'll help me answer the question. Yeah, so I guess I may have misunderstood that question. So option 1, all from the wrist. Option 2, sort of that direction roll. Okay, the latter. So, yeah, that's an interesting axis of rotation to think about. So I know people like ultimately if it's causing problems. Okay, well, it said rolling my wrist when I'm picking rather than picking up and down. So you're doing sort of like this. So yeah, like a little bit, and this kind of goes for everything. A little bit of roll is not a problem. I think you might run into problems, and maybe that's what's going on. Is like you're using all of one axis, which is usually what like people do, and that makes sense because you're like trying out different physical things on an instrument. So you're using this. You're kind of overusing this axis. So what I would say is you're going to have to, I think the thing you want to think about is using more elbow, because you can't use your elbow when you're doing that. Like if you're doing that, it's sort of locking your elbow in place. So I think you want to go, you can think of it as going to the other extreme and saying, okay, I'm going to use tons of elbow and not, let's try doing this. Let's everybody get your mandolin going with a lot of elbow and not that much wrist and no kind of lateral wrist movement like that. Or no rolling, I guess. That's a good word for it, rolling your wrist. So it's kind of all coming from the elbow. And now that's going to, if you're used to kind of either using a lot of wrist this way or rolling your wrist a lot, it's going to feel really, it's going to feel like you don't have control over the instrument. But just, every time you pick up the instrument, start out with maybe 60 seconds of down, up, down, up, down. Doing that for a while. And now that's not to say that is the only, that's pretty much all elbow. And really what you're looking for is a little bit of elbow, a little bit of wrist this way, and maybe even a little bit of wrist this way. But I think by kind of locking into this motion, you're neglecting the elbow aspect and maybe even a little bit of kind of this direction aspect of the wrist. So yeah, I would say, you can break it up however you want, but every time you pick up the instrument, spend maybe 60 seconds doing this. And then see if you can bring it down to a single string. So we're still really thinking about your elbow. And, don't like uncomfortably lock up your wrist because that's going to create a lot of tension. But just think of it as not using your wrist. Because when you go back and once you're done like doing this exercise, you're going to end up going back to your old ways. So really kick that out of your playing when you're practicing, and a little bit will definitely stick around. You're probably just going to revert back to using a lot of wrist at first, but start big muscle movements, use a lot of elbow, and then see if you can bring it down to just the G string. Now see if you can hit just the D string. It's gonna feel uncoordinated and like you don't have a way post to kind of find that spot. Now A string, and really feel the weight of your arm. E string, like your whole forearm is connected to that pick. And that's where a lot of your sort of dynamics come from. So you can try that. Short, strong, weak, 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 strong, weak, 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 A. D. Play around with, where on the instrument you like the sound. I would say that's a great exercise, and then from there, you can walk a little bit of a scale. Don't worry if you hit another string. And then, so yeah, I would say that is probably a good exercise. I wouldn't wear a brace. I generally don't recommend people wear braces either like while playing unless specifically told by a doctor, or because you don't want, like, the braces would give you a sort of some feedback that you ultimately don't want to have forever. So I would try to correct without a brace, especially if you're not having any sort of physical pain. And even then, I think a lot of times people will play, like, have a brace on for medical reasons and then take it off. Some people, like, I've had wrist braces in the past, and they ultimately did not do a lot for me and kind of just got in the way and made my playing worse. But that, yeah, I would say try those exercises. Let me see. Tim says, with tremolo. Yeah, so there's an interesting idea. With tremolo, you have, that's going to make it a little extra hard with that sort of rolling wrist motion. Because you're moving, like, look how much of my arm is, like, moving around. Because that rotation needs to start from, like, kind of your elbow without your elbow moving. And again, a little bit's not going to hurt you, but if that's sort of your main focus for hitting the string, you also, if you think about when we were using the whole arm, you have so much kind of weight and power behind your arm that you don't have access to when you're just rolling through the wrist. And it also makes, like, if I want to tremolo, I can't even do it. Yeah, like, it looks like a kind of a fish out of water if I'm trying to do that wrist. Because when you, let's see if I can do this. When you're rolling your wrist, your pick isn't staying parallel to the strings. Like, let me see here. How do I do this? Okay. When you're rolling your wrist, the pick's all over the place. Like, the pick is coming away from the strings. This is hard. You're rolling your wrist and, the pick is getting away, versus if you're using your whole elbow, the pick is staying closer to the string. So if you're trying to tremolo, the pick's going to be coming away from the string, where if you use more elbow, it can stay closer in. And so that becomes the difference between trying to tremolo like this and this. Like, it's much more of the other wrist aspect, but still kind of coming from your elbow as well. Yeah, so I would say generally, to sum up, more elbow. Keep everything loose for sure, but think about the weight of your arm. Think about the fact that you kind of want to be playing parallel along to the strings, whereas rolling your wrist is going to kind of take the pick further away from the strings in a way that's a little inefficient. That's my best guess. Great question. Love it. Let's see, what else do we have? HAIS says, hello from West Sussex. Or from Wet Sussex. Hey, Ian. Great to have you here. All right, let's see. Mike, good morning from Canada. Jim says, is rolling the wrist bad? I don't think it's bad necessarily. It's just like, you want to, if that's the only movement, that's going to cause a lot of problems that I was just talking about. But I think a little bit of, combine a little bit of kind of wrist roll with a little bit of this direction wrist and a little bit of elbow, and it just makes for a very kind of loose, ready for anything wrist. All right, let's see. It seems like Katarina Lichtenberg uses sort of an S motion, keeping the tip near the strings. Cool. Yeah, I've never really. She has amazing technique, and people should definitely check her out if they haven't. I should go look at her right hand. Yeah, she has a very well thought out technique. That's a little more kind of classically informed. But yeah, I would say anything that she's doing is definitely worth taking inspiration from. All right, let's see. Michael says, you probably discussed this before, but do you notice any appreciable difference between a $45 pick and a $1 pick in feel, response, or in sound? So this is kind of worn out, but this is my pick of choice. It's the Dunlop Prime Tone, 1.5 millimeter. And it pretty much looks like a blue chip. And to me, I can't really tell the difference between this and a blue chip, so I'm only using these. I sold all my blue chips and got a life supply of these, and then some. Put the rest of the money in the bank. Because, yeah, I would lose picks, maybe like once a year. Just because I'm out playing a lot. And that starts to add up. So I went to these picks. I can't tell the difference. Other people can, and more power to them. Definitely try stuff out and see what you feel. But yeah, I would say if you want to approximate a blue chip without paying the $40, like these Prime Tones are my pick of choice. But yeah, it's definitely about try as much stuff out as you can. I always say it's not a bad idea to spend 10 or $15 on a variety of pick sizes and shapes and thicknesses. See what you like best, and that's sort of is it going to be a large thick triangle? Is it going to be a thin little classic kind of guitar pick? It's hard to get these. This is not what I use on mandolin, but I use this on other instruments. Figuring out how, get a sample pack or go to a music store and pick up a bunch of random stuff that, most of these picks here are, 50 cents a piece or something. Oh, yeah, these little nylon Dunlops. But yeah, see what grab a bunch of different stuff. Try them all out for a while. There's actually a cool thing on Mandolin Cafe. I don't know how easy it is to get on the list, but there's a thing, I think there's actually two now, called the Traveling Pick Sampler. And it's a little overwhelming. I've never done it just because I'm kind of set in my ways, and I would be a little overwhelmed by this. But if you really want to nerd out on picks, there's a thread on Mandolin Cafe called the Traveling Pick Sampler. And it's been going for 5 or more years, I think more, maybe closer to 10 maybe. And it's I think at this point it's over 100 picks that just is traveling around, so whoever has it now mails it to the next person when they're done, and you just get to try them all out, and it's free. But you gotta it's a lot, because it's a lot of different picks at this point, but it could be fun if you really want to go down that rabbit hole. But you could also just go to a music store with a $10 bill and get 10 different shapes and thicknesses. I wouldn't worry too much about material. That's sort of second tier. I think it's important for sure, but I think the thickness and the shape of the pick is going to be a much bigger aspect of whether you like it or not than the material. And then once you say, hey, I really, like for me, I really like these about 1.5 millimeter large triangle. So then from there, I'm like, okay, what are the materials? You got like the Wagon material. You have ones. Is that in here? I just saw that. I don't know where this pick came. Oh, it's gone. I don't know where it is, but I saw like there was some random large triangle pick. It was like a Clayton that was floating around here the other day. And, so once you say, okay, I like such and such size, then you can start playing around with materials and then maybe, splurge on a $10, $20 pick or whatever if you really want to try something. But I would say figure out first kind of what thickness. And I always recommend these. I'm not saying it's the right choice, but it's a good starting point. A lot of mandolin players like large triangle, about 1.5 millimeter picks. So I also have there's a lesson on my website. I can't remember what it's called, but if you search like MandoLessons picks on YouTube or go on my website and look up picks, there's a video, like a thumbnail is me holding out a bunch of picks. But as a quick, I sort of demo through them, but here's the large, thick one. And here's the thin one. But yeah, I would say in general, don't worry about the $40 picks until you figure out what shape and size you like. Is pick angle the same for strumming as single notes? Great question. I think so. I try to make everything that I do on the mandolin the same kind of technical experience, if that makes sense. So like pick angle and all that sort of thing. So, when I'm playing, like my hand doesn't move that much going, I'm not like resetting to go from chording to single melody note back to chorus. And I think that, I get a lot of questions about, figuring out that transition between playing chords and then jumping into melody and then back into chords like people do in jams. That's kind of a tricky point from going like, 9-pound hammer is a little too heavy for my side. And if you need to like reset and go, okay, whatever, to play a little break or a melody moment. If you need to reset, that's going to sort of like interrupt the flow. But if you go, this 9-pound hammer is a little too heavy for my side. If your pick direction if your pick technique for strumming and playing melody lines is pretty much the same, there's less of that time to sort of like reset to sort of get into picking mode because you're already there because it's the same as strumming mode. That's the way I think about it. And I do the same thing with tremolo. Like use all of that work I've done to like stay relaxed and use a little bit of elbow, a little bit of wrist. Like I don't tend to change a whole lot going from So for me, if everything's the same, it kind of makes sense to me. I know there's really great mandolin players who go into like, they'll talk about like a different mode with tremolo and like kind of engage some different muscles. I'm not saying that's wrong. I'm just saying that's sort of not how I think about it. But try it all. You know, I'm sure I could learn something from trying to like engage different muscles idea. All right, great question so far. Hey, so from Portsmouth, good to have you here. Picks, prime tone cortex. What is the? It's not cortex, but maybe there is a cortex. Clown barf, tone slab. Yeah, there's a lot of. Hey, Uncle Bobby, good to see you too. Let's see. Yeah, there's a lot of different picks out there. You know, that's the thing. You can go down a whole rabbit hole of picks. So that's why I kind of try to have a system rather than just like, okay, there's so many, I got to try them all. Like, figure out. Oh yeah, Tortex. There we go. I was like, Vortex. That doesn't quite seem right, but I can't think of the right one. Yeah, you know, figuring out like what shape or thickness first is going to be really important, and then start messing around with different like materials. Okay. Those Dunlops are great for the mandolin. Yep, I like them. Is there a bluegrass mandolin for classical music? I don't know that I entirely understand the question. Ultimately, you can play any kind of music on any instrument. You know, so a lot of people think of like F-style, F-hole, like the F5, which Gibson and Lloyd Loar invented back in the 20s, which has these F-style holes. Oh, come on. But it also has like the scroll here and the points here. That's sort of the classic like quote-unquote bluegrass instrument. And people will think of these mandolins. I don't know how tuned this one is. Oh, not so bad. Oval hole. And these are both A style, but A and F style doesn't really make that much of a difference. You know, people will think of this as more of like an Irish music mandolin. Or nice for classical. But I mean, one thing to keep in mind is when Lloyd Loar invented these mandolins that are now sort of classic bluegrass mandolin, the F5, F-hole, F-style mandolin, the popular music of the day was more kind of classically oriented mandolin orchestras. So he was building for essentially mandolin orchestras, and then those kind of fell out of fashion, and Bill Monroe picked up one of his instruments and was like, hey... But if you listen to somebody like Dave Apollon, he's an incredible mandolin player, more sort of like the classical and sort of show popular tune sound. I'll write his name down because he's really Dave Apollon. I think it's 2 L's. Really interesting mandolin. He's also playing a Gibson Lloyd Loar F5, and he had a long career. And so yeah, you can play any kind of music on any mandolin. You can play bluegrass on an oval hole mandolin. Frank Wakefield did that for many years. It's less common, but that's fine. Yeah, but ultimately you can have one mandolin and play every different kind of music there is on just that one. You don't need multiple instruments for multiple kinds of music. The only reason I do is because it's my job and I'm a nerd. Any good exercises? Any good exercises for increasing left hand flexibility from RJ? Reaching those far away chords with the pinky. Like an F. So, yeah, one thing that I like to do, the biggest kind of finger stretch that I find to be the most useful in terms of like an exercise is trying to get to a comfortable place with your left wrist. You know, like, how can my wrist be the most flexible and most relaxed so I can make the largest stretch? And that, I sort of think about it from a starting point of like, okay, most of the time on the instrument, I'm going to be spending between the 2nd fret and the 7th fret. Because once you get to the 7th fret on, say, the G string, it's the same as the D, so you can play the open D. 7th on the D is the same as the open A, etc. So you don't generally have a whole lot of need to go above the 7th fret until you get into sort of like chop chords up the neck and things like that. But a way to sort of, you're thinking, okay, now I've got 2 and 7 that are sort of like my bar, you know, everything below the 7th fret, essentially. Like, how can I be as relaxed as possible in the sort of bottom half of the fretboard that I spend 99% of the time? And what I've come up with as an exercise is pointer finger on the 2nd fret, get a nice clean tone. Pinky on the 7th, get a nice clean tone. Next string D, and find a spot where like your thumb is in the right spot, and you know, you want your wrist to be fairly straight. You know, you don't want to be doing a lot of this, and you don't want to be doing a lot of that. So essentially what you want to be able to do is hit 2 and 7 comfortably and relaxedly with pointer and pinky on every string. And for me, that sort of puts my thumb right around that 1st fret bar. And then when you go to play scales, you're sort of there to go. You don't need to be doing tiny little shifts. A lot of people will sort of do things like, you know, little tiny shifts to get around. If you can avoid that and get pointer and pinky down, you won't have to shift and you'll get more comfortable. And that will increase that stretch, because that's no small stretch to do pointer and pinky. If it's too much now, try just like pointer and 6. Sorry, set 2 and 6. And then stretch out to 2 and 7 over time. And yeah, I think that will help sort of as you get into, you know, whether it's chop chords. I don't know what you mean by an F chord that has a big stretch. Unless maybe you're doing your F like this. I do that F chord like that. Ring finger, 5th, middle, 3, open A, 1st fret, pointer finger. And honestly, I usually just use 5 and 3. Maybe a little bit of that open A string. Or you can do 2, 3, open. And I don't really play the E string. Okay, thank you for the super chat, Michael. Really appreciate it. Mama Bear says, I read notes well and have played music from notation all my life. With your help, I'm starting to work on learning songs by ear. Thank you. My goal is to build a group that slow jams for fun. Advice. Ooh, yeah. I would say, in terms of, well, first of all, I'm glad you're enjoying the website, and I'm glad you're getting a lot of music in. Sounds like you've got a good thing going. In terms of advice on building a group for a slow jam, I think the thing to do, like the biggest stumbling block for me is actually just like getting people together. Because it's like, oh, you know, I want to get the right people. I don't know if I know all the tunes. Like, there's so many unknowns when you're sort of putting a group together. So I think the thing to do is just try not to worry about it. Get a bunch of people together and then take stock of like what everybody's skills levels are, what tunes people know. You know, the first one might be a little awkward where everybody gets together and nobody knows how to play together and nobody knows the same tunes. But everybody, like, you know, like have everybody write down a list of like, okay, this person played Whiskey Before Breakfast. I don't know that one. And then I played Soldier's Joy, but nobody else knew that. So everybody else writes down Soldier's Joy. And then that's how you build shared repertoire. And then you're off to the races. You can, if you want to be super organized about it, you could say that from the outset, like, hey, everybody bring a tune, and we'll start to sort of build a shared repertoire. We might not know the tune the first time around, but we'll all put in the effort to try to learn that tune for next time so we can all play it. And it definitely takes time to build up a session. I would say 95% of the problem is just like getting the group together. Because, you gotta schedule stuff, you gotta sort of like take the leap of like, well, I don't know how this is gonna go, but I'm gonna, get out of my comfort zone and start playing music with other people. It all usually, 99% of the time it works out fine, if you just try. So that's one of my requests. I don't, you find people that play in your area. That's, you can go on Mandolin Cafe and say, hey, I live in such and such an area, would love to find a group, a slow jam to play with, or would like to start one if there isn't one. Maybe you just already know people who are people who are playing. Just get them together. Don't overthink it. That's what I usually do, is just overthink stuff until nothing happens. I would not recommend that. Arturo says, where would you find a well-priced 10-string mandolin, and why are they so hard to find under $1,000? Are they just hard to play? I don't know. Yeah, nobody really makes a stock 10-string mandolin. My 10-string is like a custom instrument from a guy in Idaho, Lawrence Smart. Not a cheap instrument. I would ask on Mandolin Cafe that question. I don't really know. And then in terms of hard to play, maybe like the ones under $1,000 are hard to play. I've never even seen a 10-string under $1,000. They may exist. That could be cool. Yeah, I would say ask Mandolin Cafe that question. Because I'm not up on the scene of 10-string land. I just have what I have and play it. Ian says, grew up in Southeast London. Oh, we're just talking cool London land. Love it. Northeast Kansas. Yeah, I don't... never been to Northeast Kansas, I don't think. I don't think I've been to Kansas at all. Huh. Oh, that's something I should amend. Oh, okay, cool. So yeah, RJ says the F uses the pinky. Yeah, so you can it's a good stretch. Or it's like, I don't know, it's not the most. So in general, was it you? I can't remember who's asking like what questions now. Oh yeah, you were asking about flexibility. Like in general with that 2 to 7 exercise, like that also sets you up for kind of like a general formula for left hand finger, like what finger goes where. Like pointer finger is always on the 2nd fret, or unless it's on the 1st fret. For a lot of like flat tunes and minor tunes, but in general, people also say like each finger gets 2 frets. So pointer finger gets the 1st and 2nd fret. Middle finger is either on the 3rd or 4th. Pinky is on the 5th or 6th. And then, ring finger 5th or 6th, and pinky 7th. And that sort of comes through if you play a G scale. Your fingers, or you can use your pinky. That could be a good stretching exercise too, just going. Get that pinky to work. Another exercise is FFCP from Jazzmando. If you go to jazzmando.com and then look up FFCP, or you can just Google Jazzmando FFCP. Stands for 4-finger closed position. There's some cool PDFs that are real finger workouts. But, so the reason that I use ring finger there is sort of from that, it matches the sort of finger formula. like in the key of F. Like that's what my fingers are going to look like. When I'm playing melodies. So when I'm in there, I would probably be having my ring finger on the 5th fret, so that's where I use it for the chord too. But I also don't honestly use that chord that much. I use 5-3 open a lot, or 2-3 open, but I just almost never play the E string when I'm playing chords. That doesn't mean you have to do that, but know that it's an option. Usually the melody is kind of on the... So if I'm playing a chord in that same high-pitched register as the melody, it just kind of swallows up the melody. All right. Oh, no, you're good. Arturo says, last question, sorry for asking. No, that's why I'm here. Ask questions. I love it. It's better than me just sitting here twiddling my thumbs. What are good alternative tunings for the mandolin? That's a great question. So, practically, the mandolin doesn't do a lot of alternate tuning, you know, like fiddle players will go up to A-E for A, or cross A as a lot of people call it, or calico, which is A-E and then the E string down to C sharp, or dead man's tuning, D-D-A-D. There's all these different options, but in general, when fiddle players do that, mandolins do not retune to match the fiddles, but there are a lot of cool cross tunings to play with. So, in general, my rule of thumb is don't tune anything up. You know, there's a lot of tension on these strings. Fiddle strings are much looser. So don't take your G string up to A. What you should do, if you want to try out cross tuning, like A-E, is do it in G instead. So G, D, then your A string goes down to G, and your E string goes down to D. G, D, G, D. Oops, sorry. It would sound like this. Kind of an open chord tuning. And then if you want to be an A, then you put a capo on the 2nd fret. There's a whole lesson on my website if you look up alternate tunings or cross tuning. I go through all the different kinds. There's probably like a dozen that I talk about in that one video. Definitely, I'm a big fan of cross tuning. It doesn't hold a lot of kind of practical use playing with other people, but it's really cool. There's a really cool tuning called "Get Up, John." It's a Bill Monroe tune, and it's like this. Like one of the E's is an E, and one of the E's is a C sharp. Like he splits the courses into different pitches. Really, there's a whole world of really cool stuff. So check out that video on alternate tunings, and also, yeah, just have fun with it. Don't tune up. Tune down and capo if you need to, capo up. But usually, you know, because I'm not like practically retuning in public, I usually only do that when I'm like, hey, I wanna try something weird in my room while nobody else is trying to play music with me. By all means, like, just tune to like whatever key you want as long as you go down, and then you don't need to be in tune with the rest of the world. But then if you really get into it and then say, oh, I'm going to play this, I'm going to play, what's that tune? Booth Shot Lincoln, great cross A tune, and you practice it in G, and you go out to play it, everybody's going to be playing it in A, so you're going to need to capo up kind of practically there if you end up kind of going out and about with cross-tuning tunes. Let's see. Wow, we got a whole slew of super chats. I appreciate all the super chats that have been coming in today. Really, wow, the hour has flown by. Andy says, our beginner jam keeps picking songs you haven't done yet. Need to get Cumberland Gap out so we can agree on an arrangement. Whoa, that's the thing about Cumberland Gap is there's like 50 different versions of it. It's too much pressure for me to be the tradition bearer on that one. Like, yeah, I have multiple friends who like collect Cumberland Gaps just because there's so many different ones. I have a great friend who's collecting all the different banjo. She's a banjo player. All the different banjo tunings of that, like people play different versions of Cumberland Gap in. It's a whole world, Cumberland Gap. But that's a good. I wonder if there is sort of like a jam. I feel like I don't know what would it be like. Yeah, I don't know. I always just follow other people. When in doubt. Or I don't know. Yeah, like if somebody there feels really strongly at your beginner jam, feels strongly about their version of Cumberland Gap, ask them where they got it, and then learn it from that. And RJ, appreciate the super chat. Says great info. Thanks. Cool. Well, thank you all so much. Let's play a little bit of that La Bastrang to finish off the hour. And yeah, let me just catch up with the chat. Great for mandolin, the most useful online mandolin channel. Cool. Well, I appreciate it. Thanks for watching, and glad you're getting use out of it, and glad it's making for more mandolins in the world. Tunes are like recipes. The differences make them interesting. That is true. Not the one. That's not the one we chose. Yeah, I mean, there's also like. Can't remember exactly what the B part does on that one. Yeah, there's there's a lot. You'll have to, yeah. Let me know which one you settle on. Sorry, I can't be of help on that. But yeah, Cumberland Gap is like hilariously. There's a hilarious number of versions of that tune, like more than any other tune that I know, and a lot of them are very different. Like I have a fairly sizable music library, and like let me see. I'll do this as a little. I'm just going to tell you how many Cumberland Gap tunes I have in my library. See all. Oh my goodness. Let's see. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14 times 3. Wow, why is that hard? 28 plus 14. 42 plus 1. So I have 43 recordings of Cumberland Gap in my own personal music library, not just like Spotify or Apple Music or anything. I'm sure some of them are the same, but there's some wild versions out there. Okay, so let's play a little bit of this La Bastrang. I'll kick it off like nice and slow and simplified, and then we can speed it up as we go. So sounds like this. A2. Dum deedle dum deedle da dum 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 deedle da dum dum da 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 dum. B part. So it's 5 2 5 2. 5 2 5 2 3 open 3 open 5 2 5 2. Again. Again. take the melody. Yum diddle dum dee dum. Yum da dum dum da dum. Yum diddle da do dum. Yum dee dum dee dum dee dum. Dum diddle dum dum. Ya da da ya da da. Yum dee dum diddle da dee dum. Ya dee da 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 dum. Dum diddle die, say diddle dum, dee diddle dum, A and B. Dum diddle dum, dum dum, diddle dum, diddle da dum. Hello. Sorry. One more. Yum diddle dum diddle dum dum da da dum da dum dum da dum diddle da dum da 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 dum yodi dum yadi dum dum diddle dum 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 di dum di dum di dum dum diddle day dum diddle day. Going out. Ian says, love the variations on the melody. Me too. I was thinking about that the whole time playing. It's a really interesting tune. There's like almost, it's a really simple melody if you really take it down to the basics. Like the tune is pretty much dum 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 da dum 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 da dum 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 diddle dum dum dee dee dum 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 dum, and the B part bum 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 beetle da dum. That's pretty much all of the melodic content, but because there's so much space in it, especially that sort of B part, a lot of people like to go kind of rock back and forth. Yeah. Cool. Thank you all so much for tuning in. Hope you have a great rest of your week. For anyone here who is a patron over on Patreon, the patron live stream of the month, the July patron-only office hours, is happening tomorrow at 2 p.m. Eastern. So about 24 hours from now, I guess. Thanks all for tuning in, and I look forward to seeing you again soon. Bye-bye.